The loving history starts in a lady who compressed on a Brighton road and a boy who took a bus with a adopted £1 that would after rescue his lifetime. Simon and Becky lived in various corners of the nation. They both have had a course while they were youthful. They overcame disappointments and both have had to find out to dwell in again acquired disabilities. Year after, they would encounter by opportunity and drop in loving. Becky Cobb was 21 in 2011 and on to begin her definitive period at college. She had fare refundable of a trip to Paris to see a boyfriend and solved to go to her portion-time job at a clothing store in Brighton. It was a nice solar night, but following 20 protocol I begun to sense very lighting-headed. I had an poem in my pouch, but as I tested to sting in it I omitted it and later bring down on my knees and I fair couldn't get behind up. I thick felt love I'd fainted but I was deliberate. She was found by 2 policemen who were worried how unhealthy she looked, but Becky stored expressive them she had to get to job. They told they would get her, but just if she was capable to get in the car by herself. I couldn't outdoor the doorway. My leftward hand party was receive paralyzed so it was receive really poor and all my musculature were break. I memorable lie on one of his laps since they were proverb the requirement to hold speaking to us but I was fair so weary. Same policeman said me I was proverb real how didn't do feeling but in my chief I was speaking excellently consistently. An emergency was named and Becky was in clinic during 20 protocol, but her RAM remnant empty before 22 o'clock how overnight. She has relied on some human beings to fill in the gaps. The clinic contacted her parent in Lincolnshire and said them to get where rapidly since it was not named if Becky would pull through. The care personnel were intrigued. Though Becky was show symptoms of course, they detained behind of how diagnostic since, at 21, she would include been extraordinarily youthful to include a 2 guideline it of, they named in a advisor on her day away. While she discussed Becky, the advisor affirmed the care crew's unique thought. It was a course. Simon Commons was 17 and student for his A-levels in Chester in 2004 in plans to be an engineering. He missed grade previous how afternoon to get to his job as a bathing swimming pool rescuer. He solved same day go to the gym up his change and adopted £1 of a boyfriend to pay for a bus card. He says how, at the period, he wasn't aware the LB would rescue his lifetime, had he been without a penny and constrained to go, he may not include been close nobody who could assist him while he necessary it. Fair up he achieved his halt, Simon began to sense lighting-headed. It was as if where was a losing of deliberate monitoring. The other I stood up my legs thick felt very hard, each move thick felt love I was receive more severe and my sight was receive rather poor. He got off the bus and done his way to a side external and troop careers house. He sat downward and tested to urge his dad but his sight was so bad he couldn't see the keypad and stored dialing the incorrect numbers. I begun to scare. I put my bag downward on the story and laid downward and tested to go to sleeping since I couldn't drawing out some way to get out of the position. Within the recruiting house, 2 men were observer Simon on video surveillance system and went out to ask if he was okay. I couldn't answer since the course was touching my speaking. I controlled to compose the speech bad on a chunk of document and they named an emergency. At 21 and 17 Becky and Simon were extraordinarily youthful to include a course. Precautionary signs involve person hanging, challenge in lift the weapon and slurred speaking. It can as well involve a flash, intensive headache, vertigo, sight problems and mess. Becky, I was paralyzed. Becky consumable 48 several hours in intense thoroughness, 5 weeks in clinic and 4 persons weeks in rehab. She yet has physiotherapist each 2 weeks that keeps her tick on. I had to find out how to go once again. I was paralyzed downward the leftward party so I had face fall. I afflict tiredness yet or, at the start, my friends would go and trip me and I'd fair drop sleeping. Becky yet can't use her leftward brush and struggles to go, occasionally a few stairs about her London plane is all she can supervise, I do yet do a few improved, but it is a lot slower. At the period, the course was a surprise party, but while she looks behind, Becky thinks the signs may already include beware. She had started to expertise vertigo while she leaned her chief behind. And on the day she refundable of her travel to Paris, she went to the pub in Friends wherever she believes else sign may include shown himself. I had part a cider and got very drunken, very, very drunken. I was thought I really be drunken love the, but you can't go to the doctors and say I've had a cider and I sense drunken. Less than rather than 24 several hours after she was in clinic. Simon, I didn't very aware who I was. Simon consumable 4 persons weeks in clinic. He had lost 25% of his vision and his cognition behavior was hard of hearing. He has aphasia, difficult situation in tongue, and finds it difficult to schedule and recall tasks. My identity modified while it happened. I didn't very aware who I was over in regulation of my sameness. I thick felt love I didn't include one and I necessary to construct how up once again. Simon says how, following the course, he became more than violent since he was disappointed by the position or, to add to the aphasia had undertaken off his capacity to vote and view. At the start, though if I mind of thing, speech got loose at the spot of talk. Constructively, I could do all how I could up, but cognitively I was way over. The was the period while I thick felt the largest one. The degree of the position didn't completely hit household before the overnight he refundable of clinic and found he wasn't capable to recite his 5-year-old siblings' storybooks. He implemented the really low standard at that his read would include to begin once again. Simon consumable months work difficult at his read, written and speaking and says his marrow has now dewed himself to talk with tongue. My marrow continues to enhance, he says. Yet, instead of proverb precisely the law speech, it skirts about the theme as shut as probable. Doctors include bin compliance and eye out for future AVMs, the malformations that inflicted how original bleeding. He has withheld surgical to shoot other, 2 craniotomies and a emission shaft, but he's a continuous worry about how more than will evolve. As so as possessing to go to regulation in his new bodies and job on his restoration, they were as well at how key spot in his lives while they necessary to form his futures. At the phase, they yet did not aware every some time friends and peers went out to job and communicate, Becky and Simon were leftward to ponder which they should now do. Human beings were start to go on in his lives and I requested to be love them and include selection. I thick felt love a incapable man who didn't include lot options some rather than hard to surmount thing I'd never planned to, Simon says. He reapplied for his lifeguarding license and refundable to 10 months following the course. He ditched maths and physical science and chose instead of to research industry, geographical and IT at one level. In spite almost give her up and lack the at first circle of exams, he provided nice grades. Simon went on to research building at school and later at college. He was stipulated in an aide to get notes for him in lectures and written also he could hear to every class few times. It treated. He graded and begun job as a numberland surveyor. Becky refundable to Brighton College 8 months following her course to full her print year portion time, but lived a really various undergraduate lifetime to the one she had skilled up. Thou wait how while you go out of clinic thou re superior, but I was with a invalid carriage and a walk at here while I was 21 and he's rather a big transactions. I couldn't keep the building out of assist. You certainly sense incapable. Becky's professional physician told she would just be capable to back to college if she utilized a force-assisted invalid carriage. Unfortunate in the prediction, Becky defied such consumer expectations and refundable to college in a guide invalid carriage. She excited in 4 persons friends who she outlined as wonderful. They utilized to get me to physiotherapist and do certainly how, if they were departure to the public house, they'd get me whereas so. But several of her friendships, the ones relying more than on parties and socializing, drifted off and her priorities modified. She concentrated more than on her job and restoration and graded in a at first grade extent. It was difficult, she says. Yet it fair intended planner and possessing how web of human beings who were readily to say thou re departure to do the anweer will assist thou, I don't believe I could include made it out of how. She saw thee as a successful, but several real had to drop by the roadside. Becky had volunteered at a wireless plant in ambitions to be a manufacturer, but following her course she told she was horrible at it. I found it lot stronger to concentrated, I would back up the incorrect CDs, act the incorrect clips and do mistakes on my sound edit. It was too lot for my marrow to knob. Becky and the plant control came to a reciprocal judgment how it wasn't work as so as it one day also, and they divided business. It was very difficult since it was thing how I favor it but you include to let real go if they're not law and discover thing you are nice at or can do superior rather than up. Becky and Simon had been via a many. They were in his 20s and were yet in the restoration phase. They were as well fair on to encounter every some fully by opportunity. Almost 2 years had gone with Becky had been hospitalist while a boyfriend's dad organized a lottery at his job to lift cash for a course Mercy and guessed Becky to gather the receipt. It was the identical business at that Simon treated. Simon hadn't undertaken any note of the lottery while it happened, but was possessing a breakdown while Becky necessary otherwise. I got shown about the house and at the end of it I necessary to sit downward, Becky says. They took me in the slight chamber and Simon was sat where and we begun speaking and he fair told I've had a course too much. I'd met human beings my age someone had strokes but it was all via supporting groups, to encounter who by chance and get on so, it was fair mad. Following Simon's sudden insight she awkwardly answered, thou don't see love thou ve had a course, the one cliche sentence she despised while human beings told it to her. Simon saw history the commentary and rapidly forgave her. She says, it begun in thing in overall, later it fair grew and became really coquettish. It was really reciprocal. Becky said Simon it had been nearly 2 years with she had her course and he amazed her by offering they should go out to commemorate it. He took Becky and 2 women friends out for lunch in London. Same 2 girls told it was love creature on a day in us, Becky says. It was fair of where how we pressed. If he hadn't undertaken me out for lunch to commemorate we might not be wherever we are present. They go on to mark his course anniversaries in lunch or a weekend off and ever offer every some a map. For Simon too much, meet Becky was the at first period same very go through nobody of a such age who was as well set up to lifetime following a course. He admits he had felt rather one before she came in his lifetime. He favored her but was indecisive on operating on it. At the period I was a bit uncertain which type of relation we'd include since we'd both of skilled thing trauma and I didn't believe it was law, examining all we had skilled, for it to end in burst into tears. They took his relation slow, but became nearer and found his strengths and weaknesses supplemented every some. Simon looks following the practicalities during the relation, he cooks and cleans. Time Becky concentrates on lifetime administrator and helps Simon in his RAM. The pair newly purchased his at first household in Western London and time Becky stored the budgeting by monitoring, Simon did the natural job. He says, Becky occasionally helps fill in the gaps in my tongue at overnight while I am weary, and I fight to recall household related real, domestic bills or that draftsman my socks are to. Becky appreciates the way Simon can do the pragmatic real how she can't, and says, same just item same's not patient in is while I fall real, and I fall real all the period. He telephone call me disaster cob. Of creature capable to investigate a new town on feast via to take the recirculation out along, Becky says they consider every some as if they refuged got disabilities and wait a lot of every some. I believe we could be in human beings who hadn't been via a course, she says, yet we balance sheet out and we aware the effect of it emotionally. Although she admits she no much longer feels irresistible, Becky says where include been favorable changes within her with how day in 2011. He's done me a lot more than insight and patient man. Maybe though kinder too much. Now how I've met Simon I wouldn't changing it for the planet. Simon and Becky's definition not to be certain by his strokes has seen them person else problem, written a volume along. Hidden in me accounting records his experiences and memories and giving consultation to other in a such stance. They took it in turns to compose various chapters, and editable every some's job. Simon says, possessing a time scale spelled downward is a way to recall several of the favorable and adverse outcomes as a outcome of it advantage. I requested to do thing I would include never mind of making up my course. It can appear love the lowest item in the planet, but we requested to Shaw where our successes following it, we found our jobs and we found every sum.